So today, we're diving into a really fascinating story. It's about modern protest, a government trying to create a total information blackout, and how a pretty powerful new technology just stepped in and changed the entire game. We're going to look at what the new front lines of an information war actually look like.
You know, this one quote from our source material really gets right to the heart of the whole thing. The struggle in Iran, it wasn't just happening on the streets. It was a full-on battle to control the story. The big question was, could the protesters get their message out past the government's digital wall?
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the information blackout the Iranian government tried to enforce. Then, we'll see how Starlink created this kind of digital bridge for the protesters. We'll also get into why these images are so incredibly important, the role of tech and Elon Musk in all of this, and finally, a direct online showdown that really brought this whole thing to a head.
Okay, so just picture this. Protests are exploding all across Iran. People are desperate for change. And the government's response? It's not just physical, it's fast and it's brutal. They're also trying to build this massive digital wall and iron curtain to stop the world from seeing what's actually happening. Their goal was pretty simple: complete and total control over information.
And you have to understand, the stakes here were unbelievably high. According to the report we're looking at, the death toll from these protests had already hit 203. That number just shows you how intense things were on the ground and exactly why getting information out was a matter of life and death for these protesters.
And look, this wasn't just flipping a switch on the internet. This blackout was a coordinated attack on all forms of communication. The government cut off the internet, sure, but they also cut landlines and went so far as to cut the power, plunging whole cities into darkness. The idea was to create a total vacuum, to isolate the protesters from the world and, just as importantly, from each other.
But, you know, in a modern fight like this, a new player showed up. A technological force, literally from the sky, that completely challenged the government's control. Let's dig into how this lifeline from above totally changed the game.
So, what even is Starlink? Well, think of it as a huge network of thousands of tiny satellites zipping around the Earth, beaming down high-speed internet. It's run by SpaceX, and the key thing here is that it completely bypasses the normal ground-based cables and towers that governments can so easily shut down. All you need is a little terminal on the ground to connect. It makes it an incredibly powerful tool for getting around censorship.
And you really can't overstate the impact of this. According to our sources, Starlink was basically the main reason any images were managing to leak out of Iran. It might not have been a perfect system, but it was a critical crack in that digital wall, and it gave the world a window into what was happening. So that brings us to a really important question. Why does it matter so much to get these images out? What's the big deal? Well, it's because these images and videos, they become weapons in the fight for global public opinion. They can literally change how the entire world sees a conflict.
Now this slide, it really highlights a stark contrast that our sources pointed out. When protests were happening in Cuba, they say protesters begged for satellite internet, but that the US government reportedly said no. But then, in Iran and Venezuela, you have a private citizen, Elon Musk, who steps up and provides that exact same lifeline. It really makes you think about the changing role of private individuals in these huge international events.
And of course, this puts a huge spotlight on one person, Elon Musk, and this kind of unique position he's in, right at the crossroads of technology and global politics, at least as the commentators see it.
So according to the source, Musk's influence was seen as this powerful one-two punch. First, he provided the actual hardware for uncensored communication with Starlink, and second, he provided the global stage for that communication with Twitter, which they frame as a platform where people can, speak freely.
But this wasn't just some behind-the-scenes tech support. The whole conflict became incredibly public, and it all built up to this very direct, very defiant online confrontation between Musk and Iran's top leader.
So get this. The source explains that Iran's leader, the Ayatollah, was putting out these defiant statements, and in a direct reply to him on Twitter, Elon Musk posts a message in Farsi. The translation, as the source gives it, was a straight-up challenge. Wishful thinking that you won't be defeated.
And here's the kicker. The commentators point out that this phrase Musk used, it wasn't just some random comeback he thought of. It was an actual well-known slogan that the protesters themselves were chanting in the streets of Iran. By tweeting that, he was basically grabbing a megaphone and publicly shouting their exact words to the world.
So, this whole story leaves us with a really deep question for the world we live in now. As we've seen breaking down the source material, a private company and its CEO were able to go head-to-head with a nation-state's information blockade and, well, win. So as we go forward, we have to ask ourselves, when governments try to shut down the truth by force, what is and what should be the role of private technology? There's definitely no easy answer to that one.